Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of CrashCart. I am David Pingree, and I'm joined by Arden Ballard, our resident PA and director here of CrashCart, the podcast. And we thought we would jump on today and just talk a little bit about what happened with Jett Lawrence, ACL injuries specifically, which sadly I have a lot of experience with. Arden, as a PA, clearly a lot of experience on what goes into that. I want to thank a few of our sponsors that bring these shows to you. Motorsport.com. Boy, anything you need at all, they have it. And better pricing, great return policy, free shipping over on a certain amount of orders, or using our code, which you can find on our social channels. Race Tech Suspension. You guys need suspension or engine work done. They are doing really high-end stuff these days. Stoked to have Race Tech support. Ethica. Listen, best underwear in the game. Lots of really cool casual stuff. Check those guys out. And we have a code whiskey20, get you 20% off anything you buy. And then Zoll's Bags. These guys are making some awesome stuff. I'm really excited. They just did a run of Whiskey Throttle media bags for us. And so stoked on what these guys are doing. So check them out. ZULZ, Zoll's Bags, great stuff. So Arden, I think anyone in the kind of the medical field, when we watched what happened to Jett at the second Anaheim round, or was it Anaheim? Phoenix, sorry. It was like immediately I went, oh, he popped it. Like ACL's done. And, you hope, well, maybe not. Maybe it's just a bone bruise, or maybe it's just a little meniscus tear or something. But for me, anyway, when I see a guy smack that foot down, right, and ironically, I don't know that anyone's really talking about this yet, but ironically, it's Jason Anderson that he rubs up against his back wheel, which causes him to dab. It's like, of all the people, right. But when you stab your foot like that, and then it kind of rotated a bit and then drug behind him, and I just was like, it didn't look bad, right? But the way he responded, that was, to me, was the telltale sign. Immediately, he lifts the leg up, his hand comes off the bar. I mean, it was like, I know that pain. I know that feeling. I'm sure that in his head, he heard a pop or it's always described as hearing a pop, because it reverberates through your body when that ligament pops, when it snaps. I mean, it's a sickening feeling if you've never had it done. And once you've torn one, you know the feeling. So as I saw him right off, I was just thinking his ACL is cooked. And hopefully, I was thinking, hopefully it's just his ACL, because, when one goes, it's like if there's enough torque to pop one, you can pop multiple, right? So tell me what your thoughts were.
Yeah, my heart breaks for Jett, man. A lot of times I think as a rider and an athlete, if you have some crazy extravagant crash, you walk away with a broken bone or something, you can kind of, in your mind, you could say, okay, yeah, I kind of earned that one. I wadded pretty bad, here my arm's broken or whatever. Jett didn't even fall off the motorcycle, and now his season is ruined. And my heart breaks for him, man. That really sucks. And I was as hopeful as you were, but I immediately knew exactly what happened inside that knee when I saw it on TV. And everything that you said is accurate. He started guarding right away. He brought his knee up. He took his hand off the handlebar and rubbing his knee, and I knew his ACL was gone. And I think the important thing, interesting thing for the listeners to understand here is that the ACL, it's a deceleration ligament, right? And what I mean by that is, as you're running along or as you're moving your knee, as your knee bends, your ACL prevents the bottom part of your leg, your lower leg, from sliding forward. Okay. So if you imagine, if you're running, you're sprinting, you start to slow down. Well, a lot of that force in your knee would slide your knee forward if it weren't for your ACL. Right. So imagine now dabbing your foot down on the ground. Well, you just went from going 20, 30 miles an hour to zero effectively in that leg. And so there's not a knee brace on earth that's going to stop those forces from transmitting somewhere. And unfortunately for Jett, it went right into his ACL. And I don't even know if he wears knee braces, and it's not knocking on any product or anything, but that's a lot of force, man. And it's got to go somewhere. So, what happened, that lower leg plants and it's fixed. And now that ACL only has so much play before it gives. I mean, the ACL is about as thick as an X-Acto marker, right? A little a felt tip marker, a little bit thicker than the size of your pinky. And that pop is a lot of times it's audible. I don't know if he heard it over the sound of the bikes and everything. He probably certainly felt it though. And then I think he said he has a meniscus tear as well. When that knee starts to slide forward and everything's crunching down, now the top of that femur is just scratching along top of those meniscus and it starts to tear. So I think he's in surgery right now, and I wish him the best for recovery. But when he said 4 months for recovery, that's a solid testament to how the recovery process and how the surgical process has gone and changed over the last 20 years per se, right? I mean, Ping, not to date you, but if you tore your ACL in the late 90s, you're probably looking at a 9-12 month recovery time at the earliest. And,
well, yeah, I'll tell you. So what I always was told, and I tore ACLs in 93. I tore my right. 96, I tore my left, and 98, I tore my right again. So I've had 3 reconstructions, and I believe my right is partially torn again at this point. I've had multiple meniscus tears. Some of them, and this is interesting. Probably not relevant to his racing career, but it'll matter down the road, is where that tear is in the meniscus will depend on whether they just cut it off and remove it or they
Correct.
suture it and let it heal. I think it's the interior part that gets blood supply. The exterior does not. Am I correct there, or am I backwards?
You're backwards.
Yeah. So the outside edge, it's like 2 C-shaped discs, your meniscus. That's the cushion that your femur and your tibial plateau kind of sits between those 2 things.
Yep.
So that it glides and has some cushion. If it's an exterior tear, then the blood supply gets to it. It will heal. They'll suture it up and it'll heal itself. I've had that done. I've also had plenty where it's an inside tear and they just go, it's not going to heal, and they just cut it out.
Yep. So they're cutting a portion out, right? But yes, the surface area has been decreased, and so now that leads to arthritis down the line, and you have less shock absorption from the downward force there.
And I am living that nightmare as we speak. Just it definitely has an effect when you get older. Again, I don't think it might affect him in his racing career, but he'll feel that down the road. Now, the recovery time, I was always told, and there's multiple ways you can repair the ACL. One is, and I don't know if this is still the most prominent method, but it always was using your patellar tendon. So basically from your kneecap down to your tibia. And they take about 1/3 of that tendon right there, and they use that as your new ACL. And they screw it in kind of top and bottom, tunnel through, and create an artificial new ACL. And what they tell you is that graft dies and then has to regenerate. And so at 3 months post-surgery, you're going to feel good. You're going to feel like, hey, I'm ready to get back to it, start riding, start doing everything. The graft is actually at its weakest point. And there's a lot of repeated tears, because at 3 months, people get all crazy, start doing something. It's at its weakest point and it tears again.
That's correct.
Now, there's also cadaver ligaments that you can use. Those heal quicker. There's a chance that your body will not accept those. It'll reject it and you'll have all kinds of issues. And then I know there's experimental artificial tendons or ligaments rather. I don't know what your experience is about those. I was told by my doctors back in the 1900s, probably don't mess with those. Either go the cadaver route or go patellar route, or they can do a hamstring tendon, which I did on obviously I'd already used my patellar tendon on the right knee. So the second surgery we used the hamstring tendon. If you use your own patellar tendon or hamstring tendon, your recovery time is obviously much longer, because now you've got 2 injuries you're basically healing at the same time. So my guess, and I'm just guessing, when he says 4-month return, he's probably going to use a cadaver ligament. That would be my guess too. And the choice of the procedure is going to depend largely on the surgeon he talks to and the consultation that they have. The surgeon's going to have a preference. The athlete's going to have a preference. You're right. I think donor grafts have come a really long way.
And it's probably the way to go. I remember, Dino, when he had his, I don't remember if it was his third ACL or his fourth or whatever. He went back to Europe and had a knee surgery done because the graft that he wanted was an artificial graft, and it wasn't approved in the United States. So he, went back home, or went to Europe to have it done. And of course, that one, I believe, failed too. So I don't think that they're approved in the United States to this day. I think your two options are to use your own tissue or to use donor tissue from a cadaver. And there's several donor sites. The bone patella bone is the one you were talking about in the front of the knee, where they take a bone plug from your kneecap, a bone plug from your lower leg, and they take the ligament in the inside of it, use that, and they feed it through. They have a hamstring graft, which only has a bony plug on one side, and then they wrap their magic and do their sutures. They bundle it up and make a ligament with that. A couple other places, but those are the most common ones. And you're right. If he's saying 4 months, my guess is that they're going to use a cadaver bone, patellar bone. And I think that's becoming even more popular now, because a lot of people will have surgical site pain afterwards from the kneecap. So they'll develop a lot of tendonitis. They'll develop a lot of kneecap issues because, you're missing a third of that tendon, that ligament that's now gone. So, that's my guess. And I'm sure he'll use whatever legal means necessary to improve his recovery and get back together as fast as possible. Now, pro athletes, they have the luxury of having time on their hands, right? And so if you or myself tear an ACL today, we're probably going to go to rehab 3 times a week. And they're going to say, okay, well, you have some homework to do between sessions. Well, Jett will probably do therapy 3 times a day. And, his sole purpose will be getting back on that bike, which is also a big contributor to him getting back an anticipated 4-month time. I don't think the layperson would be able to do that. Not even, 6 months to say, they would have to work their tail off in order to get back to that sport that quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, it was always about 6 months, is where the doctors agreed, like, okay, you can get back to it. I'm curious to see what he does in terms of recovery. A lot of like what RFK wants to do if he gets in, which I think they're confirming today, but is for whatever reason here in the U.S. and I mean, we can talk about the reason. I think the reason is peptides are naturally occurring, so pharmaceutical companies can't monetize them. Peptides work, man, for recovery. They absolutely work. Stem cells absolutely work. There's no question. But because at this point, pharmaceutical companies haven't figured out how to turn that into dollars for themselves, the government has just blanket outlawed them. Now, you can go to Mexico, you can go to Europe. There's places you can go. And I imagine he will go, because to speed recovery time, BP157, stem cells, I mean, there's a lot of things he could be doing to really speed it up and make 4 months, particularly with a cadaver. I think you can make that a reality.
Yeah,
what are your thoughts there?
I totally agree. We've done some videos about this, in particular the peptides, and when we talked about Eli's recovery from his Achilles tendon injury, a lot of these things, number one, aren't illegal in the eyes of the AMA and any type of doping agency. It's not a quote performance enhancer because it naturally occurs in your body. So peptides are phenomenal medical advancements, and they've been used for a long time, but they've recently gained more popularity because, well, let's face it, people are catching on to the fact that they do speed up recovery and they do decrease injury time, and they have a profound effect on injured tissue. So I'm sure that Jett and his team, Red Bull has their performance place in Europe, and I'm sure they will be all over him to use any and all means necessary to heal this as quick as possible. It's still, there is going to be some precarious moments when he gets back on the bike, right? Because like you said, the cellular changes take a long time, despite the fact that you're physically capable of getting back on a motorcycle. So he'll obviously have to be careful, but with today's medical advancements and with the popularity of these alternative treatments that have been proven to reduce inflammation and increase healing time, he'll be back and better than ever before we know it.
Yeah, I'm curious to see, Ryan Hughes put out a video. He's obviously a big opponent to knee braces.
Right.
And I don't like to really wade into this too much because I'm not going to be the guy that tells somebody don't wear some safety gear. But I will say from my personal experience, every ACL I tore, I had custom fitted carbon knee braces, the highest end ones you could get, custom fitted to my knees for all three. And I tore an ACL 3 times and broke a femur. So it's like, to your point, that energy has to go somewhere.
Right.
Right. And if there's enough energy to tear an ACL, I don't care how tight you strap those ties on your knee brace, it's going to shift. They certainly can't prevent rotational movement, but even forward and back, which is what a brace is designed to do, it just failed, right? Like if there's enough pressure, it's going to tear it. The brace can't stop it. That isn't to say they're useless or they don't serve a function, but it's just yet another example of how people think they throw the braces on. Oh, I'm good. I'm safe. My knees are good. It's just not the case. And so then you know what Rhino talks about a lot is they do knee braces inhibit your knees' ability to function and move as they normally would. And I don't wear them anymore. I stopped wearing them. Rhino, when he went off on that whole thing, I said, I'm going to give it a try. I'm open-minded about it. It took me about 2 rides to feel comfortable. I'll never go back. I use an 8mm neoprene sleeve with a regular knee cup over the top of it. And I found my feet are actually tucked in tighter. I have better control of the bike. I can lean and rotate my knees more easily. I can tuck my toes in, the way you're supposed to, where a brace wants to hold your foot straight. There's a lot of things to it. And I'm not going to tell anyone that they should do that. I'm just saying yet another example of an injury with the knee brace on. So
I agree with you. I think knee braces, they're quite controversial when it comes to medical equipment in action sports and in motocross. I'm certified to fit OSHA braces for prescription knee braces, and I put hundreds of people onto knee braces. That said, it's after a specific conversation with that particular athlete, right? Maybe they have a fresh ACL that they're trying to protect, or they've had a series of knee injuries in the past, or they have cartilage damage, or whatever it is. I agree with you. I agree with Rhino. I think your riding technique is far better without them. I don't think that a knee brace is just going to save you. The mechanical forces are far too great, and there is that thought that knee braces could contribute to femoral fractures because, again, the force has to go somewhere. So if you're watching or listening out there, I think if you're considering knee braces versus no knee braces, I think it's a conversation that you have with your provider or a trusted medical professional and say, hey, look, this is my particular circumstance. What do you say? And you can make a decision for yourself. I do think these knee braces have outstanding protection to the collateral ligaments of the knee, right? The ligaments that run alongside the inside and the outside of your knee, your medial collateral and your lateral collateral ligaments. And that's because if you drag that foot in a rut and it starts to pull this way, that MCL is commonly torn in that circumstance. I think knee braces do a good job with those. When you're talking about the forward and backward translation of that knee relative to the femur, the upper thigh bone, I think there's just too much play there.
Yeah, and rotational as well. Your foot
Correct.
grabs and twists, brace doesn't do anything. I don't want to dive into that. I just wanted to touch on it. The one other thing that I think is worth paying attention to, from the time I tore my first ACL, I was never as comfortable again coming into right-handed turns.
Mm-hmm.
I always had some hesitancy about putting that leg out there. And I use the analogy of touching a hot stove all the time, right? Like you're only going to kind of do something that hurts you so often before then it starts to affect you, even subconsciously. And he's young. I think he'll probably be fine with just this injury, but it's like he's just coming off an injury. He gets back on the bike. I would say not even fully up to top speed yet, and he's hurt again.
Right.
This is what really throws a wet blanket on careers, is just repeated injury, because you start to just get gun shy. And, my first thought was, dang it. Well, there goes his shot of trying to beat Jeremy's win record. I mean, I think he had to win 7 or 8 rounds per year for a decade. That's right. A tall order in the stacked field he has. Now you've taken him out of an entire season. That's going to be tough. But I wonder, how does this affect his career long term? Even if he gets it fixed, it's perfect. He has no residual pain or lack of range of motion or anything else. How does that affect his career?
We have to think. It's funny, the wet blanket analogy, or the hot stove analogy. I remember Austin Faulkner talking about after his last knee injury, where he had his first practice crash after his surgery, and he was like, "All right, I got that one out of the way. Like, I'm good now." Like, because everybody's riding around like they're walking on eggshells, waiting for that first one, right? Get that out of the way. Is my knee going to hold up? Is everything going to? That certainly has to follow you into the season and into the races. We'd be foolish to think that it doesn't live in the back of their mind somewhere. Only the best are going to be able to fully block that out. But you're right. I really hope this doesn't have a detrimental effect on his career, and because we want to see him around for 10 or 12 years. But you're right. He just lost an opportunity to, 15 more races or so for this year in Supercross, and those are gone.
Yeah. And, this game is so mental, this sport. And you look at the greats, whether it's Jeremy or it's Ricky or Ryan Dungey, these guys didn't have injuries. Ricky tore an ACL. That was the only injury he had, I think, his whole pro career. I mean, I may be missing something there, but I think he had a couple of minor shoulder injuries and things. But and again, it's not the end of the world, right? It's just, but it's the second one in a row, and like now you start to go, what's going on here, man? Like, is his career taking a turn? So I hope not. Like I said, I think Jett would be an incredible person to lead our sport for the next decade. He's certainly still that guy on paper. So here's hoping that he has on. There he is on your screen behind you, rolling off.
Oh, yep. There he is.
Let's just hope the surgery goes well. I'm sure he's got a great doctor, probably going to Vail or somewhere. And let's hope the recovery goes well. Let's hope I'm praying for him. I hope it all goes great.
Same here. I don't want to have this conversation about him or any rider really, but we understand that it's part of the sport. But he's at a pivotal juncture in his career now, where is he going to be injury prone, or is he going to just ride off into the sunset and win the championships that we expect him to win? Yeah. So we hope it's the latter.
Well, if any of you folks have any questions about knee injuries or anything else we've discussed, leave them in the comments below, and Arden and I will both kind of browse through and respond to questions. And yeah, man, appreciate the time, and best to Jett, and hopefully he heals up quickly and completely, and we see him back on the track soon.
That's right.
So thanks for everything, Arden. Appreciate it, buddy. Always appreciate your expertise, and we'll catch up with you guys on the next one.
My pleasure. See you guys.